Tall Tales and Cocktails is a tipsy and raunchy good time for adult audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to Tall Tales and Cocktails.
Yes, welcome back. Glad to have you.
It is episode 3. We made it to episode 3, which is very exciting.
Yes.
We're gonna talk about some sun gods today, which is super exciting. We want to thank everybody for listening to our first episode. We actually got a pretty good response.
Yeah. 5 stars, right, so far?
5 stars on Apple so far. We're doing great.
That's
Keep
good.
on giving us them stars. We love the stars.
Yes, please.
Over 40 downloads on our first episode, and I was expecting like 5.
Yeah.
2 of them being you and me. So.
Right.
That's super exciting. So thank you guys so much for listening. It's great, and I've been really appreciating all the feedback from our friends, which has been awesome.
Yes, much appreciated.
What have you been up to since the last time we recorded?
Well, I've been working on some artwork. I've had some pet portrait commissions that I've been working on. That
one you posted the other day was so cute, the little bulldog.
Yeah.
He's so good.
Yeah, they were really... Jess brought her aerial hoop to my house, and I got to try that out, which was fun.
That sounds like a great time.
It was a lot more difficult than I thought it would be.
Yeah. Lyra is a whole other beast.
Yes. It's hard to hoist yourself up onto it in a graceful fashion.
Grunting the whole time.
As long as I just point my toes.
Super sexy.
Yeah. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. I'm excited to see Jess fly on that thing.
Absolutely, she's gonna kill it too. Absolutely, she's gonna kill it too. That's super exciting. We started practices again too. We're back to getting on that 217 burlesque grind, which is super exciting.
Yes, many exciting things coming this year.
The sun's shining. The birds are coming back. It's a good time of year. Sun's shining. The birds are coming back. It's a good time of year.
Yes, it is.
I haven't been up to much of anything. Editing, researching, and then a lot of video games as per usual. Playing Divinity 2 right now, which has been fun. It's kind of like it's like really similar to D&D, just with a different mechanics on your combat. But it's super fun.
Right on.
I like it a lot. We had our release party last night, which was really fun as well.
Yes, we did. We got to celebrate.
It was a great time. We made the fire and moose ham again, and had some yummy cocktails, and we got to spin fire. Oh, yeah, I spun some fire. We left a little early, but it was great to spin fire again. I kind of did it at that party last week, but that was like the first good burn that I had. It was really fun. And I was burning.
Yes. Yes.
Very cute. I did a little burn to Dovahkiin from Skyrim. It was great.
Nice.
It's a good time. I might have to see if I can do some fun stuff with the footage from it. We have a drink today.
Yes.
As we do. We have a drink today.
Yes.
As we do every time. And we are drinking Tequila Sunrises.
Yes, we are.
What's in a Tequila Sunrise?
Well, it's got 1.5 shots of tequila, 3 shots of orange juice, 3 ounces of orange juice, and 1/4 ounce of grenadine.
Absolutely. That's it. A Tequila Sunrise. They're delicious. This is the first time I've ever had a Tequila Sunrise, and it's very good.
Same here.
It's also really pretty.
Yes.
It's the prettiest drink I've ever seen.
You'll see that in the photo.
We totally recognize not everyone wants to drink. And if you are drinking, I hope you're drinking responsibly.
Yes.
Don't drive. Don't drive.
If you're listening to this in the car, you definitely shouldn't be drinking this.
Yeah. Please don't drink while you're driving.
Just drink some orange juice.
In there. Real nice morning kickoff.
That's safe.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to bring us into our first story today?
Yes, I shall. So, I focused on Helios, which is the Titan god of the sun in Greek mythology. He was the son of Anthea, the Titan goddess of sight.
Ooh.
He lived in a golden palace in the river Oceanus, which was a freshwater stream that encircled the entirety of the earth and connected all of the rivers and springs. It was this river that Helios emerged from every dawn, crowned with the aureole of the sun, driving a chariot led by 4 winged horses.
Winged horses? Like Pegasus?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yes. He would travel from east to west every day, and every night he would travel back in a huge golden cup that floated with the current of the great ocean. When he would rise into the heavens, he'd reach the highest point at noon, then begin to descend. The time of rising and descending also differed with the seasons. So, as you can imagine, the Greeks paid a lot of attention to the sun and the cycle of it, and as well as the seasons. So he's really just like the personification of the sun, and behaves as the sun does.
That's super cool.
Yeah. Helios is described as handsome, clothed in purple robes, and has
purple.
Yes.
Mm.
Has a golden helmet and a golden breastplate, dazzled with a million rays so bright that no mortal could gaze upon them.
Ooh.
Yes. Impressive. Helios had some pretty cool sisters, too, that are worth mentioning. Selene, the goddess of the moon, and Eos, the goddess of the dawn.
Ooh. Got kind of a star-studded family there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, Helios had a pretty big role in the beginning of plant and animal life. It's said that Helios first shone his light upon the earth in the early days of the cosmos, when Uranus and Gaia had been driven apart from the Titans. From his light and warmth, a new life of plants and animals sprouted from the bubbling mud. So initially there was just a bunch of mud and not much life happening until he basically came and warmed everything up.
Oh.
And plants grew, and then animals came, and they were able to walk on the earth.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
He got rid of all the mud so that the animals would come.
Yeah. So, what I found interesting was Guardian.
Ooh.
So, he's, most people know him as, like, the sun god and his role in that. But he was also considered the Oath Guardian, a.k.a. Gossip Guardian, as I will explain.
Ooh! Is it like Gossip Girl?
Basically. There's, like, all sorts of drama happening. Oaths, because he was known to see and hear everything as he journeyed across the sky. So he just gaze upon everything. Yeah, he witnessed all sorts of business. Stuff he probably shouldn't have seen.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Yes.
I like Helios. He sounds like for the latest scoop.
Oh yeah, he knew all the business that was happening. He saw so much shit. Like, sort of like the neighbor that's cleaning the gutters and happens to look over as you're shagging in front of the second story window. Just happens to catch stuff. Helios witnessed the affair of Aphrodite and Ares.
Ooh, that's some hot gossip.
Yep. So he reveals to Hephaestus, which is Aphrodite's husband. Hephaestus, who is pissed off, of course, ends up catching them in the act, literally. He basically builds a net. Did
he then respond? Did she then? No, that wouldn't work. I was gonna make a reference to Shaggy, and I just failed miserably.
He basically builds a net.
Did he then respond? Did she then? No, that wouldn't work. I was gonna make a reference to Shaggy, and I just failed miserably. It was me.
That's okay. So he sets up a net, and the next encounter that they have. That's okay. So he sets up a net, and the next encounter that they have together, he basically like catches them in this net. So it completely humiliates them. And yeah.
So they get caught in a net while they're having sex.
But the story doesn't end there. This gossiping Helios ends up getting himself into trouble when Aphrodite later seeks revenge.
Ooh.
So Helios himself was unfaithful. He actually has like a lot of mistresses. Oh. One of them... So Aphrodite invokes Helios with a passion for Clyde's sister, Leucothea, which enraged Clyde and filled her with so much jealousy that she told her father, the king of Babylon, to bury her sister Leucothea alive. And it's like, it wasn't even like her fault. I mean, she's just kind of like looped into this business. So Helios, still under this love spell, is devastated. And I quote this directly from my favorite book on mythology, the Encyclopedia of Things That Never Were.
Ooh. That sounds like a cool book.
It is. It's very good. The story goes that Helios tried vainly to restore her by pouring his warmth into her cold body. While Clyde...
Is that a euphemism?
Ooh. She might be kind of dead, though.
Is that some necrophilia there?
Ooh, it might be. So, while he's trying, Clyde destroyed herself because she had lost his love. She lay naked upon the wintry earth and refused to eat or drink. But her love for Helios was so strong that her body took root and became a beautiful flower, the heliotrope. His daily journey across the sky.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's kind of bittersweet.
Which I actually thought it was interesting, too, that the heliotrope is a purple flower.
Oh.
So it kind of represents the purple of Helios.
That's super cool.
Yeah. So, yeah, kind of a sad ending for Clyde. Well, I guess it's kind of a bummer for everybody in that story.
That sounds like everyone had a real bad time.
Yeah.
Everyone was cheating on each other, gossiping about each other.
Yes.
Dying.
In a sad way, but...
Dying.
In a sad way, but kind of beautiful way, I guess.
Yeah. That kind of tragically beautiful. I mean, Greek tragedy is like a big thing.
Mm-hmm. So, next I'm going to talk a little bit about the Kin of Helios. As I had mentioned, Kin of Helios. As I had mentioned, he had a lot of mistresses and affairs. So, as you can imagine, he's got lots of babies.
He's a sun god. He's got to have that potent
spreading that seed all over the place. So Helios was married to the Oceanid Perse and produced 4 children with her. I won't go into their names or anything because I'm actually going to talk more about his bastard children because they have more interesting stories. So another mistress Helios had was the sea mare. They had 1 son and several daughters. So many daughters, in fact, that they don't know how many. They just collectively called the daughters of Helios the Heliades.
Oh.
Which I thought was interesting. But the sons thought he was so beautiful that she named him the Shining One.
Oh.
But as he grew older, he became sort of an arrogant asshole. And basically just, boasted about the fact that Helios was his dad. And yeah, so he just went around bragging about that.
I mean, your mom's a sea nymph, you said?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like you get pretty big-headed.
Yeah.
Like, he's probably got the, you're so special from his parents all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Got that entitlement.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, he's very entitled because he goes up to Helios one day and he asks him if he could take his chariot of horses one day from dawn until dusk to prove that he was the descendant of Helios. He was the descendant of Helios.
So he wants to borrow the jag to go impress the ladies and be like, I told you my dad was Helios.
Yeah, yep. So Helios, trying to be like a cool dad, I guess, decided to let him take it for a spin. No training wheels, no driver's ed, nothing. Next morning, Eos drew back the curtains of dawn, and Helios handed him the reins, and off he flew into the morning sky. Phaeton quickly loses control of the horses as they pulled him in every direction. The mortals would basically look up into the sky and just see, like, the sun bopping around. like, what's happening?
Are we gonna die?
Yeah. So yeah, that's terrifying. But then even more terrifying is he swoops down and actually catches the forests on fire and the crops on fire.
Oh, fuck!
And it gets so hot that, like, the rivers start to boil.
Yeah, I wonder if they... And that's part of where this legend, like, comes from.
Yeah.
Like, it was so hot, like, abnormally that they, like, made up a story that went with their already
I bet you're right about that.
That'd be a really interesting way to explain it. Be like, oh, yeah, it's the son of the sun, and he doesn't know what he's doing.
Noob up there. Controlling things, for sure.
Yeah.
So this catches the attention of Zeus, because he's like, shit's on fire, like, that's no good. And so, in fear of, him basically destroying everything, he actually takes a lightning bolt, and Phaeton actually falls to the earth, and he ends up dying.
Oh my goodness. That's so sad.
So that was the end of him. But his body was buried by river nymphs on the riverbanks of the Eridamus River. Then his sisters, we don't know how many, but all of his sisters come to mourn his death and turned into poplar trees, which now line the river, forever sighing and whispering their grief. Mm-hmm. It is also said that their tears turned into golden amber, which can sometimes be found when digging up the ground near the river.
Oh, that's super cool.
Which I thought was so interesting, and also just kind of like back to the other story of Clyde, turning into a flower. I just thought it was interesting that, like, Clyde, turning into a flower, I just thought it was interesting that, like, man, you're just so sad that you turn into a plant.
I mean, like, if you think about it, like, when people go through grief, like, you can sometimes hit this kind of vegetative state where you just shut down and can't go. I mean, you don't actually become a plant, but
right.
I could understand why they might exaggerate in that way. Because that's kind of what it feels like.
Definitely. Yeah, I just thought that was really interesting.
That's super cool.
Yeah. So, I think it was interesting that even though Helios supposedly saw everything, there is a story where some of his very own belongings are stolen right from under his nose. So in the story, the Odyssey, picking right back up from where Adu travel through the Strait of Messina, where Scylla and Charybdis reside. We talked about that last episode.
Yeah, last time.
So I just thought it was kind of cool that it picked up after that. They come upon the lovely island of Threnation. This island is home to the cattle and sheep that belong to Helios. Odysseus is actually warned by the blind prophet Tiresias that he and his ship will come to the island and will be tempted to feast on the sheep and cattle, but must leave them unharmed. The prophet said, "If you set your mind only to return, you may, all of you, still return, though with much misery. But if you harm them, then I foretell there will be destruction alike for your ship." The thing about the flocks and herds of Helios is that they never actually change in number. So if you try plucking like a sheep or a cow, like it wouldn't go unnoticed because they never change. There are 7 herds and 7 flocks, 50 heads in every, nor deaths decrease them because they are actually immortal.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Immortal sheeps and cows?
Yep.
That's awesome. I guess it's not sheeps, it's sheep. Sheeps.
Gather thy sheeps. So, Odysseus said, I just talked to this prophet, and we're going to find this island, and we're going to be hungry for cow and sheep, but we need to not go there and not be tempted to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And then this other guy, I don't remember his name, but we need to not go there and not be tempted to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And then this other guy, I don't remember his name, but then this other guy basically stands up to the crew and says, "Dying of hunger is the most pitiful thing of all. Let's pick off..." But then this other guy basically stands up to the crew and says, "Dying of hunger is the most pitiful thing of all. Let's pick off the best of the cattle and give it as a sacrifice to the sun god and build temples in his honor when we return."
Ooh.
So naturally the crews they go to the island and they start slaying the cattle and the sheep to feast upon them. Meanwhile, I guess Helios is busy spying on other gods' business.
So he doesn't notice that.
And,
he's not tending to his own farm while he's paying attention.
He's not paying. And, probably just, spying on other gods blinking. And he's not aware until actually his daughter, Lampetia, rushes to tell him.
Oh.
So, Helios is obviously pissed off, so he goes to Zeus and tells him that if he doesn't pound to Hades.
Oh.
Yes.
Threatens to take away the sun. That is a great bargaining chip.
Yeah.
It's
like, you want the sun or what?
Do you want to have light and warmth, or do you want to die? Yes. Or at least all of your creation to die.
So Zeus doesn't like the idea of the sun shining on the dead. So he decides to intervene, and he sends a tempest on the island and strikes the ship with a thunderbolt, destroying the ship and killing all but Odysseus. So, yeah.
Why did he spare Odysseus?
Odysseus, actually, from what I had read, he didn't partake in the feasting.
Oh, okay.
And he did try and tell his crew
not to do it. So Zeus was like, "All right, homie, you get to live. You tried to do it."
So he's like,
no guilt by association there.
But he still was sort of punished in the sense that he lost his ship and his crew. Mm-hmm. So he at least got to live.
But he got to survive. That almost might be a worse punishment. You lost all your friends. You lost your boat.
Yeah. Yeah, that would suck.
And then you're just left by yourself.
Yeah, that's lonely and
on
sad.
A voyage.
Of sadness.
A flower of sadness.
And I actually did find it interesting, and I probably should have read more on this, the fact that they feasted on immortal cattle and sheep.
Yeah, how were they able to...
I don't know if, the following day they would...
replenish?
Yeah, I think that's how that happened.
But if that's the case, why does he care?
Right.
Why can't they eat it?
Yeah.
Why shouldn't
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. A sad thing. That's actually an option when you die. You can be put in a little tree pod.
Mm-hmm.
And be grown into a tree. It's actually kind of what I've been thinking I want done with my body.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've also seen, this is on a TED Talk, this woman designed a bodysuit that she basically studied different types of fungi that would break down different parts of your body, like in the most efficient way, and built a bodysuit that you can actually like be buried in. So like it just kind of like recycles your body, like
that's
through the
cool.
use of a fungus.
That's super cool.
Yeah, I bet they're expensive, but
probably
also a really cool thing.
Yeah, I think that tree.
Yeah, I bet they're expensive, but
probably
also a really cool thing.
Yeah, I think that tree pods are really expensive too.
Yeah,
it's a super cool way to be like memorialized. I don't really want a headstone or to just be shoved in a fancy box to sit in the ground.
Yeah, that's not the way I want to go.
I want to be useful.
Exactly. Let's see here. I have another story or two about Helios. These are actual Aesop fables that I found on Helios. One is called the Contest of Helius, and tells the fable describes a contest between Helios and Boreas, the god of the north wind and winter. The two gods fought over who was the most powerful, so they held a contest to see who could first strip away the clothes of a wayfaring man with his might and attempt to blow off his clothes with strong winds. But yes,
it sounds like an anime. Like, I blew all your clothes off.
Yeah, totally. But to his failure, with each blow, the man wrapped his cloak tighter and tighter because he was probably cold. He displayed all of his warmth on the traveler with his intense rays, resulting in the man warming up and taking off layer after layer. Finally, overcome with heat, he got butt naked and jumped in the stream.
Skinny dipping.
Yep. So, yeah, I thought that was...
Dipping.
Yep. So, yeah, I thought that was kind of a neat little story about persuasion is better than force.
Oh, yeah.
The other fable I came across, it's about Helios and the frogs. This is actually told both in the Greek mythology, and then the Roman sun god, which is Sol.
Mm-hmm.
And they're both kind of interchangeable in this story. But in this fable, once upon a time, when Helios and frogs lifted up their voices in clamor to the sky, Zeus, disturbed by the noise of their croaking, inquired the cause of their complaint. One of them said, Helios, now while he is single, parches up the marsh, and what will be our future condition if he should beget other sons? So basically they're saying, if he procreates and has a son that has the same powers,
that they'll dry up.
That they'll just dry up and die.
Well, frogs.
Yeah. Yeah. Frogs living in the marshes. Which is kind of funny because it reminds me of a childhood story.
Yes! I love your childhood stories.
So, I don't think I've ever actually told you this. When I was a kid, I was nicknamed FK, which stood for Frog Killer. I was nicknamed FK, which stood for Frog Killer.
Oh, no!
So, in 4th grade, it was called, like, Monday morning meeting, where we would pass around an M&M and, like, talk about what we did on the weekend. And I was, like, always in 4th grade, it was called, like, Monday morning meeting, where we would pass around an M&M and, like, talk about what we did on the weekend. And I was, like, always catching frogs and, like, you know, like, dead things and stuff. But,
yeah. And
there were a couple of cases where I would catch frogs, and it was like I wanted to keep them, you know. And so one of the stories that ended up in a frog death or actually a couple frog deaths. I caught a bunch of little baby frogs, and I think maybe I could live in an arid environment, so I kept them between my window and the screen of my bedroom, because I thought, like, they can breathe because, like, there's, like, the screen. But the problem was, like, the sun was, like, directly on the house and coming back, and they were just, like, dried up and fried.
You made sun-dried toads?
Yeah, and I was horrified. And it's not like I purposely tried killing frogs.
No.
But
that seems like a completely innocent thing for a child.
Yeah, but yes, I just thought, it's funny.
That is funny.
Reminded me of my childhood.
I actually have a childhood frog story as well. I was notoriously bad at keeping, like, small pets like that alive. When I was a kid, like, my betta fish died, like, 3 days after I got it. My betta fish died, like, 3 days after I got it. But my mom got me this, kit for raising a tadpole to a frog. And the tank was really cool. It was, like, 2 little igloo, practically, looking things together. Yeah. And then it had, like, a beach and little water area, and, like, looked really cute. And you would raise your little tadpole. And he got to the point where he had little feet and still had his tail and was starting to look like a frog. And, like, he was so close. And then one day he just died. And, like, I fed him regularly and everything. I followed all the rules. Dad and I had a little, like, funeral for him in the backyard and buried the little frog in a corner. We had, like, a corner of our backyard, which was, like, the designated pet burial area.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But, yeah.
That's adorable.
I also killed frogs.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's pretty easy to do.
Yeah. They're not really meant for captivity at all. No. No animal's really meant for captivity, but they specifically really just can't survive.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sad. But, I mean, you still learned a lesson, I guess.
I did. I learned a lot about death.
Yeah.
And the loss of my froggy.
Aw. Yeah.
And the loss of my froggy.
Aw.
I can't remember what I named him. I wish I could. I'm sure it was something stupid.
I don't even know if I named any of the frogs I caught. I used to catch a bunch of crayfish too. Yeah, and from the creek.
What are crayfish?
Crayfish, crawfish.
Crawfish. Okay, I thought I was like missing something for a second.
Yeah,
You had crawfish in your creek?
In the creek, yeah. Yeah.
Like, did you guys have crawfish in your creek?
In the creek, yeah. Yeah.
Like, did you guys ever eat them? Like,
no. I don't know if you'd want to, but yeah, they're freshwater, and they'd be, because I used to go swimming in the creek all the time, and I would just like catch them, and it was sort of like a Coliseum thing where I like put them in a bucket, one claw to begin with, and I was just like rooting for that guy. I was like, come on,
love your Coliseum.
But yeah, so that was a lot of my childhood, just catching stuff and trying to keep it, trying to make it fight.
Making a little battleground. Should have started betting on it. Could have made a... Taking bets.
Yeah.
A quarter per bet.
Oh, that'd be great. But yeah, that's all I've got on Helios.
That's awesome. That was a great story. I didn't actually know that much about Helios. I knew he was a sun god, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. He's the gossip girl of Greece.
Yes. Yes, he is.
And there's the episode title. The gossip girl of Greece. Actually, we could maybe get in trouble for that one.
Maybe.
For my sun god, which I'm pretty excited about. He was very interesting. Ra is the Egyptian god of the sun and the personification of sunlight, warmth, and growth. He is a god of many names, including Re, Amun-Re, Khepri, Ra Horakhti, and 2 names stemmed because Ra's identity was actually combined with other deities later on. As the mythos developed, they started combining some aspects of gods. So he was combined with Horus and with Adam, who were two separate gods at one point. He is illustrated as a human man with a falcon's head, adorned with a sun disk that's surrounded by a cobra named Uraeus. And I believe the cobra represents wisdom.
Okay, that's
which
interesting.
Is super interesting. But alternative depictions later on super interesting. But alternative depictions later on when he was combined with different ones, he had either a ram's head or a beetle head, specifically a scarab.
That's cool.
Yeah, scarab head would be kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I've ever seen a picture of that one. I'll have to see if I can find one. Maybe post it up on our. So the origin of Ra, the first references date back to the ancient Egyptian Second Dynasty, or Old Kingdom, which spanned from 2890 to 2686 BC. And then he became a major god around the 5th Dynasty, which spanned from 2494.
Okay.
So he was around for a long time, but wasn't that important until much later.
I see.
Depending on the different translations or the time period, he had 2 major origin stories. He either created himself from the chaotic primordial void. Ooh. Again, seeing the chaos there. Chaotic primordial void. Ooh. Again, seeing the chaos there. I love that there's always some kind of chaotic origin.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure we will definitely cover the Egyptian creation myth eventually, but not for a while because I kind of want to let it go a bit before we touch on that. Or he was also possibly created one step after the creation of the universe. So the creation happened somehow, and then there would be an egg, and he would emerge from. There would be an egg, and he would emerge from the egg.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Which is interesting because he had a falcon head, so we can that's kind of interesting. But in most of them, he quite literally willed himself into existence.
That's just so powerful.
I want to be alive, so I'm alive now. I want to be alive, so I'm alive now.
Yeah.
Ra's super dope. I really enjoyed reading about him. He's pretty cool. It's also believed that he pretty much created everything else in both versions. So whether he willed himself to existence or came out of the egg, he pretty much created everything else after that. Which
right.
But yeah, he created pretty much everything. Ra also spawned 2 children through unusual means.
Yeah.
He spawned them through masturbating.
Whoa.
Right? So not only can he will himself
babies.
He can autonomously have children just by jerking off.
That is crazy.
Right? And the Book of the Dead describes it as follows. He put his phallus in his fist to excite desire thereby. The twins were born.
Interesting.
Yes. I really didn't know that there was masturbation in any mythology, specifically stated like that. So that was interesting. Shu became the god of wind and sky. That's one of his first children. And then Tefnut became the goddess of moisture and wetness. Also mist and rain. Apparently she's the original WAP.
That's good.
That one cracked me up. I laughed at myself for 10 minutes. I laughed at myself for 10 minutes. Through the Eye of Ra, which at the beginning, the Eye of Ra was just representative of his power, but in some of the later mythology, it's actually almost an entire separate being that's his feminine
entity.
Yeah, so it's yes, it's his eye, but it's also separate from him. And through that eye, Ra fathered 4 daughters: Bastet, Sekhmet, Hathor, and his favorite Mut. He did have a favorite. The single dad of the year, but he actually cursed his granddaughter, Nut, who is the daughter of Shu and Tefnut. So the siblings got together and started making babies too, which I guess would make sense because there are no other beings.
Truth.
And they're trying to populate the pantheon, essentially.
Let it pass.
Brother Geb instead of her grandfather Ra. Because Ra was in love with Newt. And she didn't love him back and loved her brother.
Dang.
That
is a really weird triangle.
It gets real twisted. But he cursed her with infertility and said at no point in any month, day, year, or time would she be able to give birth. Talk about some family drama. He's like, because you won't have babies with me, you can't have babies with anybody.
Dang.
But there was another god, Thoth, who is one of Ra's siblings. Birth. Talk about some family drama. He's like, because you won't have babies with me, you can't have babies with anybody.
Dang.
But there was another god, Thoth, who is one of Ra's siblings, who had been gambling with the moon and was like literally gambling time and gained extra days to add to the year. That were like superfluous days that didn't count as part of the year. It's part of their calendar because their calendar actually has 360 days. And then there's like 5 extra days that aren't considered part of the year.
Interesting.
Yeah. And because of Ra's curse couldn't apply to them because he didn't have control over those days, which allowed Newt to give birth to Osiris, Horus, Set, Isis, and Nephthys.
Wow.
Yeah, so star-studded family. Like, that's all of the powerhouse. I kind of consider them basically like the ancient Egyptian Kardashians, just with way more incest. But they called Ra's family the Heliopolitan Ennead. Later on, which I'm guessing with the Helios there, it probably existing
had that influence.
Trade relationships and were interacting. So that was kind of cool. And then now you might be wondering, what is a typical day like in the life of a sun god?
Do tell.
So every day, Ra would sail across the sky in his royal boat. It was called the bark of millions of years. And that's its main name. In the daytime, he would call it Majet, which translates to becoming strong because he's like rising in the sun. And throughout the day, he would protect this boat from the serpent. Apophis, which Apophis was the god of chaos. He was trying to take away the sun and beat Ra all the time, probably to take over if he's anything like the Apophis in Stargate. Because that motherfucker just doesn't die. But at the end of the day, follow him up and he would die. But he would continue sailing to the underworld, where he would call his boat Semektet, which translates to becoming weak.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then in the morning, he would just rebirth himself and start over.
Because he can just do that.
He can literally just rebirth himself. So that was basically a day in the life of Ra. He just sailed across the sky, fought a serpent, died, reborn. Every day. But so he got to a point where he started getting old and he wanted to be done, but he couldn't really be done. So he's just kind of, names were a source of great power, right? Mm-hmm. So they believed that the gods hid their true names to protect that power. Okay. And with all the drama that Ra had caused over the years, Isis, the queen bee of the Egyptian gods and goddesses, embarked on a mission to find the source of Ra's out. And like I said, he got old and he was pretty much just napping and drooling on his throne all the time. Ew. Like he would just take naps and just drool because he was passed out. So Isis collected his drool and formed it into a poisonous snake with her magic, because she was the goddess of magic. Mm-hmm. Habits and would walk the same path when he did walk every day, because he didn't sail anymore. He would just walk and like look at everything he made. She set the snake on his path so that it would bite him. Oh. And Ra would usually be immune to such attacks, but because she made it out of his own essence, it was able to poison him. So Ra was poisoned, and It caused him immense pain and suffering, and he just felt awful, so he enlisted all of his followers to find a cure for his affliction, but none of the cures worked. They just could not heal him no matter what they tried. They just could not heal him no matter what they tried. Isis offered a cure to Ra in return for the knowledge of his true name. But Ra's not too dumb now. He is the, like, head honcho of the gods. So he was skeptical, and he answered with many boasts, like he just talks about how he is everything. I am the sun and moon. I created everything. And just gives her this, like, really flowery bullshit answer. And ended with mentioning 3 of his names. That he is Khepri in the morning hours. 3 of his names. That he is Khepri in the morning hours, Ra in the afternoon, and Adam at night. And Isis didn't like this because it's not his real name, so she got all pissy. And continued pressuring him, promising him that the only way she could cure him is if she knew his true name. Overwhelmed with the pain and desperation, that he broke down and agreed to Isis's exchange. You don't actually get to know what his true name was.
Okay.
But Isis did. So she now had this power over him by knowing his true name, so she demanded that Ra give her son Horus his 2 eyes, so that when Horus became of age, he would be the new sun god, which is why eventually they're kind of just combined into the same person.
I see.
But yeah, so Horus is eventually going to be the new sun god. But that's kind of Ra's retirement plan. He just gives his eyes to... And he just gives his eyes to Horus and takes a break. And it's done.
That's awesome.
Retire. It didn't really say if he died after that. I'm assuming he's immortal because he can just rebirth himself all the time.
Right.
But he was just not the sun god anymore.
That's a really cool story.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what I have as far as the stories of Ra, but I have a bunch of pop culture references.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
There's a ton. There's the animated film, The Prince of Egypt. I don't know if you ever had to watch that when you were young, but I grew up in the church, and we watched it all the time. But Moses, when they're trying to, like, lure him into worshiping their gods instead of, like, the Christian God. And they're like, by the power of Ra! And they say it, like, 25 billion times in the song, but... So there's that, but he's not in it himself. In the Harvey Birdman animated series, the titular character, Ra also makes appearances in episodes of Hercules and Yu-Gi-Oh! Which is interesting. And then he has several video game appearances, including Smite, where he's a playable god, so you can actually play as Ra.
That's cool.
Age of Mythology, and then one of my childhood favorites, City or Tropico game that's like set in ancient Egypt. So you play as a pharaoh and you like make your city, and you have to make irrigation systems from the Nile to raise your crops. And
that's cool.
You build like marketplaces and stuff, and like it was cool because you could like click on the little individual citizens. I mean, there was only so many different ones. Little individual citizens. I mean, there was only so many different ones, but there was these lady ones, and they would hold little baskets on their head, and they were walking to the bazaar, and they'd always say, "And now I'm off to the bazaar for more," but it didn't say what. Like that was just what they said when you clicked on them. It was funny. I used to play it with my grandpa. When you clicked on them, it was funny. I used to play it with my grandpa all the time when I was a kid, and it was super fun. And then in Indiana Jones, he uses the Staff of Ra to find the Ark of the Covenant and Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I love Indiana Jones.
Which is great. And these are... I'm a huge fan of the TV show, and I hadn't seen the movie yet when I started researching. And I had started writing up the synopsis of how I thought the movie went based on how they talk about it in the TV show, because they do reference a lot of the stuff that happens in the movie, but they changed a whole bunch of stuff, and Michael was reading over my shoulder, and he's like,
the movie's good. See, I haven't watched the show, but I love the movie. Yeah,
so we ended up having a movie night and watched the movie, and it was amazing. I actually loved that I knew all this stuff from the show, because there's so much that ties into each other. Mm-hmm. It's so good. I love it. But I was, like, geeked out the whole time. He's actually an alien. He's real ugly. And he takes over a human man to preserve his life and takes over Earth by convincing the ancient Egyptians that he's actually a god. Which is cool. And a little bit of a spoiler alert here, because I'm kind of going to describe the entire movie real quick. But eventually there's this rebellion when he's ruling over Egypt, and he has to take a bunch of slaves with him, and he escapes to a different planet. And there's a Stargate that's, like, connecting the planets. And but eventually there's this rebellion when he's ruling over Egypt, and he has to take a bunch of slaves with him, and he escapes to a different planet. And there's a Stargate that's, like, connecting the planets. And the ancient Egyptians, like, buried and sealed that Stargate because they believed that it was sealing away Ra. Like, he can't come back. But eventually some unsuspecting archaeologists find the Stargate, and the government begins a secret mission to figure out how it works. Then the movie jumps forward like 62 years. And they're only missing one piece of the puzzle for their, like, gate addresses to be able to link the gates. My nerd bay. I love him so much. I love Daniel Jackson. And he figures out how to make the gate work by figuring out the, like, point of origin symbol for Earth. So he ends up jumping through the gate with Colonel Jack O'Neill, who's, like, super depressed military man whose son just passed away and is kind of on a suicide mission with them in a bunch of chaos ensues. Like, they show up in this other planet, and all these people think they're gods because Daniel Jackson's wearing this, like, necklace that has the symbol of Ra on it, so they think he's actually Ra.
Oh.
He unknowingly gets married and then starts, like, kind of sowing seeds of rebellion and, like, by command of Ra, so they wouldn't know the truth of where they came from. Because there were records, like, there were hidden records of, like, how they got to this new planet. Abydos is what you find out it's called on the TV show. But then, big surprise, Ra shows back up in his pyramid spaceship. The entire army team, or Air Force, sorry. The entire group of Air Force guys. But a few of them survive. He ends up capturing Jack, and Daniel gets, like, shot, and you think he dies. But he gets put in the sarcophagus, and he's brought back to life, which is dope. Daniel dies so many times in the movie. I found very funny, because he dies so much. Sorry, I'm talking really fast, because I'm really excited about this. And then a whole lot of stuff happens. The slaves decide to help them because they want to be free. Daniel and Jack want them to be free, but Jack's supposed to blow up the starship and everything, or the Stargate and everything else that's supposed to be there. But Daniel convinces him not to, so they take the bomb that they can't get to turn off, and they shove it up this teleporter that goes into the spaceship, like, as Ra's trying to take off and escape, and blow it to bits. And I will say, Ra is very fashionable in it. All of his outfits were spot on.
On point.
So good. It's a great movie. I highly recommend watching it, even though I've spoiled a lot of it, because it's way better than even how I described it. And God, Ra. Yeah. Sorry if I talked really fast. I've had a lot of caffeine and now alcohol as well. I do have a question for you.
Ooh, let's hear it.
Yeah. So, if you had to choose between having the head of a falcon, why?
I think I would go with the scarab head.
The scarab head would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I just kind of like the idea of having, like, a hard exoskeleton with, like, having the antennae and the mandibles. And
like, antenna wiggly back and forth.
Yeah, I think that'd be cool.
You could be the queen of your bug coliseum.
Heck yes!
You'd be their goddess.
That'd be perfect.
Yeah. I think I would go with the ram's head, because it's pretty dope. You get the cool, like, curled horns and...
Yeah, that was a close second.
I think that would be pretty
Ram horns
dope.
are really cool.
Yeah. I think I would go with the ram's head, because it's pretty dope. You get the cool, like, curled horns and...
Yeah, that was a close second.
I think that would be pretty
Ram horns
dope.
are really cool.
They're just really cool looking. Do you want to introduce our new segment?
Oh, yeah.
Because it stems out of your childhood.
ram horns are really cool.
They're just really cool looking. Do you want to introduce our new segment?
Oh, yeah.
Because it stems out of your childhood.
That's true.
Hobby.
We're calling it the Tall Tales Takedown. And each episode where it's between, well, for today it's going to be Helios and Ra.
Yeah, but other episodes it might be the creatures that we're talking about. I know we kind of did it with the Leviathan and the Kraken.
Yeah.
So we're going to start doing that all the time.
Yeah, new segment. So,
Tall Tales Takedown.
It's the Tall...
Who do you think would win? Ra or Helios?
Ra.
I mean, he could literally just rebirth himself.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Helios, has his shining moments. Maybe he could outrun the boat. I think...
Maybe. Well, yeah, because there's, the weak point,
they're figure out a way to hit him when he's down and already been swallowed by Newt. But if they're put in a coliseum together, I think it would definitely be Ra.
And it depends on what point of time. Is it during the period where Ra is just drooling and napping?
I think it would be
in his prime.
In both of their primes. They have
primes.
to be at the same level of prime.
Okay,
so high noon, both of them at their absolute peak strength, fighting it out. Yeah, I think it would go to Ra.
I think the most clever strength Helios would have over Ra would be if he just gossiped a bunch about Ra. Have over Ra would be if he just gossiped a bunch about Ra.
Oh, what if he made up a bunch of shit?
Yeah, and he's I'm all seeing, I see all this shit,
right?
And just makes up stuff and gets. Other gods to turn against Ra. And
gets or even just gets under Ra's skin, does some fucking emotional abuse basically, and it's Newt will never love you,
and then Ra cries and turns into a desert flower.
That is a way Helios could win. Yeah. It doesn't talk much about how Ra would kill him, but I just feel he probably just burn him.
Yeah.
But he's also fighting a snake every day, so he's got to be pretty buff.
Yeah, I would think so.
Pretty ready to go. But yeah, so I think our Tall Tales Takedown champion, mutual decision, would be Ra.
Ra, yeah.
Yep, Ra.
Yeah. Definitely. Not in the cards for you.
Yeah. Well, this has been a super fun episode.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed myself.
I learned a lot. I knew some about Ra, but...
Yeah, I didn't know much about him either until I started looking into it. He's very interesting. Yeah. As per usual, a big thank you to Dr. Mr. Dreamer again for our intro and outro music.
Yeah, and thank you to Noble Stabbings for the artwork.
Yeah, I love our artwork. It's so good.
Really happy with that.
We recreated the pictures of us with onesies for our release party.
We actually own those now.
Yes. Pictures of us with onesies for our release party.
We actually own those now.
Yes. we'll post a picture at some point because they're adorable. Next time on Tall Tales and Cocktails, we're covering Paul Bunyan and Johnny Appleseed.
Yes. Some American folklore for ya.
Yeah.
American folklore for ya.
Yeah, and as always, the drink... Oh, wait, do we tell them the drink usually, or...
We can.
Let's do it! I thought we kept it a secret, but no, let's do it.
Why not? Get them prepared for the next one.
Yeah, we're gonna drink apple teenies. It's one of my favorite drinks. So
yes.
I want listeners to do, Severin.
We want you all to subscribe and share and rate.
Yeah, we need those 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Not 1 star, not 2 stars, not 3, not 4, 5 stars!
5 stars, please.
Yes.
And yeah, you can follow our Facebook, facebook.com/TallTalesPodcast. We've got an Instagram at TallTalesPodcast. Also our YouTube. We don't have a URL yet.
YouTube, we don't have a URL yet. It's going to take some time just with their requirements, which we're going to release some information about how we're going to meet those. Take some time just with their requirements, which we're going to release some information about how we're going to meet those requirements soon. We're just kind of trying to decide how we want to do that. But for now, you can just search Tall Tales and Cocktails, and it's the first thing that pops up pretty much. So, that'll do it for today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you ready?
Yeah. See ya.
See ya.